back, and this is MS Relief official launch, Unleash the Joy Factor. Just love that. And we're here today, the co-founders Trish Robichaud and Linda Grace Cox. We are back today we are so excited to tell you about our guest in this particular interview in our series. Our guest is Elaine DeLack. And some of you with MS will recognize the name immediately, and the other ones will probably just go, I've heard that name before. Where have I heard that name before? And this is where you've heard that name before. A board-certified registered nurse whose work focuses on research and treatment options in multiple sclerosis, depression, autism, and Alzheimer's. I didn't know that. We'll have to hear more about that. Her scientific publications have appeared in the journals Multiple Sclerosis, Clinical and Laboratory Research, and Alternative Medicine Review. Formerly, she worked in the care of the elderly and those with chronic disease in transitional care facilities. In the past 12 years, she's been active in the advancement of new treatments for multiple sclerosis and related disease states. She's developed and patented treatments for MS, depression, and bipolar depressive disorder, and autism spectrum. You have been a busy lady since Prokarin was launched.
Oh my! For my office to be so messy.
There you go. There you go. She's lectured throughout the United States and Canada to patients, doctors, and pharmacists on issues of medical research and study application. Fascinating. She's the CEO and founder of two medical research companies, EDMS LLC and MedDev DEV Inc. Mrs. DeLack's passion for research was spurred by her need to find something to help herself. From some of you who might recognize her name and her story, you might remember that Elaine has MS as well, and was diagnosed when she was about 30 years old, which is precisely the age I was when I was diagnosed. But mainstream medicine recognized treatments at the time of her diagnosis proved to no benefit at all to her. So she went on to do some research and explore amazing options that none of us lay people would ever thought of, and we're really excited to have the developer and the brains and the everything behind Prokarin. And welcome, Elaine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I want to start by saying that about how you got even into thinking about doing research to find a cure.
You know, and my book talks about this a little bit. I've had a lot of doctors say this too, you know, how could just a nurse, how could a nurse...
Just a nurse.
Just a nurse, yeah. In fact, I've always said I should have some more acronym behind my name should be RNJAN. Or RN, just a nurse. I always hear that. But, and I've had a lot of doctors say, how could you have done this? And I don't know how other people believe or how you may believe, but it's a guidance. It's if you want to call it divine, if you want to call it universe, if you want to call it God, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, it's almost, I just get these ideas. And when I first learned of it, and I even, was getting this, I was, when I had been diagnosed, right after I got diagnosed, I came out to Seattle. I was living in Montana at the time, and I came out to Seattle, Washington, to get a second opinion. And the doctor, said, yes, you have MS, go home, eat well, sleep. There's really nothing we can do for you. This was before we ever had any FDA-approved drugs for MS, because remember, the first one came out in 1993, and I was diagnosed in 1988. So right after I got home from getting a second opinion out in Seattle, Washington, right after I got back to Helena, Montana, I got a phone call from a lady. To this day, I don't know who she was. And she said that she'd heard that I had MS. Now, how she heard that, I don't know. But she told me to contact this Dr. Raymond York in my hometown of Helena, Montana. And I had heard the name York just because there was a school named after him, but I didn't know anything about him. And I called him, never got to talk with him, but I talked with his wife. And he had MS himself and had been experimenting on himself using vitamin B12 and adenosine monophosphate injection. And so I got a prescription in the mail 3 days later from him for this vitamin B12 and adenosine monophosphate injection. I wasn't a nurse at the time. I had completed 3 years, but then, took time off when I got diagnosed and couldn't do it anymore. Didn't feel like I could finish the course. And so I started using just the B12. Not injectable, but just oral. Well, I'll do that. Well, I continued to get worse and actually moved out to Washington in 1990. And that move was really hard on me. Well, by this time, Dr. Bjork had passed away at the age of 81. And I couldn't find, I was really having some problems. So I started working at this veterinarian clinic. And he kind of noticed that I had this limp and, some things. And so I told him, what was wrong. And I said, I wish I would have paid attention. I should have done this protocol that the doctor gave me, but I didn't. And now his prescription has expired. Well, I think I have a doctor friend that would prescribe it. So I went to that doctor. He started me on it, and I got better. I got to the point where I could, I still had to get all my sleep and, get at least 10 hours of sleep and kind of trying to avoid stress as best possible. But my cognitive fog got better, my fatigue got better, so I went back to school, finished my nursing, and started trying to get doctors to do this vitamin B12 and adenosine monophosphate on their patients that I was caring for. They all said there's no medical documentation as to why that would work. So I went back to school and took a research course on how to do research and to find out, how do I research this since Dr. Bjork has passed away? How do I research this to figure this out? Why this is helping? And I was at the University of Washington in their library, and it was almost like it was just like the day just. I was in there early in the morning, and next thing I know, I'm reading this. I'm just simply going first. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to find a common denominator between vitamin B12 and adenosine monophosphate, right? And so I look up vitamin B12 first, and I open up my clinical pharmacology book, and it says this sentence, and to this day I remember the sentence. It says, histamine and histamine analogs increase the intrinsic factor. Now, I only really understood the and the, that whole sentence. It didn't make any sense to me. But I got these huge chills, like just, these really good chills. And I'm like, well, what's that all about, right? And I was kept looking for vitamin B12 and adenosine monophosphate. And I was getting frustrated, but every time I came across the word histamine, I got those chills. So I finally got fed up because I wasn't seeing this adenosine monophosphate connection. So I thought, well, I'll try this. And I put it into the computer, adenosine monophosphate, and up came this one research study talking about how histamine via the histamine 2 was the biggest stimulator of cyclic adenosine monophosphate. There was my connection. The connection between the B12 and adenosine monophosphate was this histamine 2. So I started, I just found all these research and all these studies I needed, and of course it took me months and months to read through them. But I started studying those and came up with this theory. Now, I had been doing just fine with the B12 and adenosine monophosphate, right? So I didn't want to really rock the boat. And in 1996, the fall of 1996, my employer was adamant they made all nurses get flu vaccine, and I had avoided those. I had to get the flu vaccine. When I got the flu vaccine, that B12 and adenosine monophosphate quit working for me. I got sick, and I just went downhill. So then it was like, well, it's time to walk the talk. You put this theory together, clear back in 1993. You believe this is right, walk the talk. So I had to search to find a doctor who would prescribe me the histamine, and I actually met with a neurologist. Was the first one. It was another doctor I was working with in the clinic said, go to this neurologist. She even has MS. And, I'm sure she'd be happy to do this and look at this with you. So I went to her. Now, she looked fine. You wouldn't know she had MS, except that she divulged it to me. And so anyway, she looked at my theory and she says, I want to try this. I think this will work. And she said, I've got several pieces I want to try it on. And I said, well, make me your guinea pig. I said, so I transferred my records over to her. the day before I was supposed to get my appointment, she called and said, "I'm sorry, I cannot prescribe this to you." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, because we're a large clinic, we had to go before our legal counsel, and they all say, no, we can't do it." And I said, "But didn't you argue the risk versus the benefits? Histamine's been used since 1911. We've used it as a diagnosis for gastric acid problems. They use it to hyposensitize people, for allergies and stuff." And she said, "I did, but they just won't let me do it." So anyway, I ended up going back to the doctor who had prescribed the B12 and benzene monophosphate to me. He saw it and he says, "Yes, this will work. Let's try it." So I ordered up I ordered the histamine diphosphate and had to give it by injection. And immediately, I just felt wonderful after taking that. But after about 2 or 3 hours, the injection would start to wear off, and I'd have to do it again, and another injection. So I was giving myself an injection every 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
And by about the third day, I was supposed to go see the doctor on the 5th day. I got it on Monday. On the 5th, on Friday, I was supposed to go see him and for a follow-up. And by Thursday, I started getting my symptoms back. They started coming back, and I'm like, "This is placebo. I really thought this was it, but I'm wrong. It's placebo." And Friday morning, I'm taking the shower, and the heat from the shower is giving me symptoms, wiping me out. And I'm like, "Oh, geez, this didn't work." So anyway, I go into the doctor's, and I said, "Just forget it, doctor. I was wrong. I really thought this was right, but, I was wrong." And he said, "No, please don't give up on this." He said, "Your theory makes complete sense. Don't give up on it." And I thought, this stuff's expensive. I don't know. Please, just go get another week's worth, and let's try it again. So
he was encouraging you to stay the course.
Yeah, he was. And so then I went to the pharmacy that I purchased the first week's worth, and I went in to get a refill. And the pharmacist goes and hands it to me, and he goes, "You are refrigerating this, aren't you?" And I said, "No." Well, nowhere in the literature does it say it needs to be refrigerated, but something's telling me you need to refrigerate this. I'm like, okay. I went home, I refrigerated it, that took care of it. It worked beautifully.
Amazing.
It did work. So then but the trouble was I still needed an injection every 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
I remember in my research, I remember reading this one research about caffeine. And when I ran across the caffeine, for some reason, I thought that came to me when I had been doing my research several years ago, had said, you're probably going to need to track of this. So I thought, caffeine. What was it about the caffeine? So I went back and read. Sure enough, it was, it increases the cyclic AMP, and that's what I was trying to do with the histamine. So it maintains it. So I put the caffeine in, and now my prescription, now an injection the effects of it lasted 8 to 9 hours. So this is, by putting the caffeine in the injection, I started getting abscesses under my skin because the caffeine was not friendly to the tissues. So that's when I had to find a compounding pharmacist, which I didn't even know existed. And I used to use the Yellow Pages, which I consider my Rolodex. And I, found this pharmacy close by. It was right at the top of the page where it opened up right to these pharmacies. And here up at the top it said that, we make hard-to-make compounds or something like that. So I contacted Richardson at this pharmacy. She's only like 5 miles away. Tell her what I want to do. And she's all excited, and I go in and meet with her. We have breakfast. She says she wants to do it, and so she ends up making this compound. Well, it's a miracle. PAX did a segment on me, and when the movie producer came and was filming her and asking Judy, I was just kind of in the background just listening. I didn't know the story. He asked Judy, he said, "What did you think when Elaine walked through the door that day wanting you to make this compound?" And she said, "It was an absolute answer to my prayers." She said, "I have, that morning, I was getting ready for work. I was asking God, there's got to be something I can do, something I can use my talents better than just count until. There's got to be something more I can do." And she said, Elaine walked through the door that day. So anyway, she's the one that actually developed the formulation for me, the original formulation, and then it's just developed on. Now we have it in a little disc that is much more convenient than even the cream to use. But so when you say, how did you come up with this? I did. It's just these things. I get these, and that's how I even have expanded out to bipolar, depression, etc. Is I just get these things, and I get books that come in the mail. Here's an interesting one. Story. I got this. We had trouble. Everything was going great with the Prokarin for a long time, and it seems like just when I get comfortable, God or universe or higher power, whatever you want to call it, knocks me, says, you aren't done.
Yeah.
And
I think he thinks we get a little too comfortable, and he's going to give us a little shake-up,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was really getting comfortable. Everything was going well with Prokarin. All of a sudden, the company that was making our histamine no longer made the histamine. We had to go to a company. Ajinomoto was the first one to make it. Then we had to go to a Chinese company. Well, that Chinese company, when we started using their histamine, it didn't work the right, and we were having trouble with it. It wasn't working in the formulation. So I was literally in tears one night, driving home, and I'm just kind of talking to God myself, and I just go, "Oh God, no, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. I'm not a chemist. What do I do? I do not know why it's not working. Why since we changed the histamine, it's not working." So then I pulled up to my mailbox, and I'm getting the mail out, and I get this book is in the mail, and it's probably 2-3 inches thick, and it's got my name on it, my address, just like I subscribed to it, right? So I come into the house, and I'm going to scan through the book, like you would, because it was a chemical book. It was a chemical from a chemical manufacturer. And so I'm going to fan through the book, right? And it pops open to this page, and I'm drawn to the left-hand side, page. And I just look down, and I look at this molecule down at the bottom. I'm like, ooh, that looks like something I could use, I have no idea what I'm looking at, but it looks like something I could use. So I don't get any chills or anything, but I post-it sticker that page, right? And fan through the rest of the book. Then I close the book, right? So I just post-it sticker that page. And put the book away. It looks interesting. I'll put it in my little library here. And that, we continue to have trouble with the histamine. And so a week goes by, and then one morning I wake up, and first word in my mind is isomer. Now, I never heard that word before. I had no idea what it was. I had to get up and go look in a medical dictionary to see what it was. And I thought, well, what the heck? I put went to National Institute of PubMed, put in histamine isomer, right? And up came this one research study in 1947, and it talked about how you had to have this methyl group. It had to be on the side chain for it to have an H2 effect. If it was on the ring, it wouldn't have that effect. Now, I didn't even know what a methyl group was. I had to go find that out, read my chemistry book. What's a methyl group? Da, da, da. Well, it's a CH3. So I go back and I think, I just wonder. So I go back and I open up that book, right, that had come in that chemical book that had come in the mail, back to that page that I posted stickers. I look at that molecule. I was looking at the bottom. Oh, darn it. The methyl group is on the ring. It's not on the side chain. I'm like, So I don't change pages. I just go to the top of that same page, the next column, and there's the molecule. And I get these huge chills. I get chills again thing. So I think, okay, I'm gonna get that molecule. So I called the company and I said, I want to order this such as well. Well, what's your account? I don't have an account. He said, well, you have to have an account. How could you have gotten our book without an account? I said, well, you mailed it to me. You had my address, my name, and everything. They said, there's no way that could have happened. And I said, well, I got it, and I want to mail it. Well, blah, blah, blah. So they checked me out. I had to see my blood, and I showed that I do medical research. Blah, blah, blah. So I was able to purchase it. Purchased it, and so now I'm like, okay, what do I do with it? So I just figured out a cream to put it on, and because I would do everything transdermal. Because what if it's bad? I can rip it off, right? I don't want to rub it in or anything because I can rip it off. And I go to put it on, and I think, I'm going to go fourth of what I was going to put on. It ended up being the right dose. Now that molecule, I've gone on to do further research. That molecule is works very well to helped to control my MS. Much better even than the Prokarin did, and it actually shows very good promise in Alzheimer's.
Wow.
It's just a story of kind of some of the stuff that's happened to me.
What you ended with, it works with Alzheimer's also. Is this the patch you were telling me about that is an enhanced?
No.
Okay.
No, I can't make, I know I have to go through the whole FDA approval process to make this available to people, you know. But, and I, you know, I'm planning to do that. It's just money.
Right, you're not a pharmaceutical, so.
Right. There you go. There you go. You know, the one thing that strikes me, Elaine, about your, and by the way, thank you for taking the time to share your story. Because, you know, the fact that this treatment is working for people is not exciting enough. But now hearing the background story that it was, this whole process and this whole journey has been like a spiritual experience for you. That is so cool.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, those couple examples I just told you, those were just one of many. You wouldn't believe the number of things.
Amazing. Just truly amazing. So, how long have you been taking Prokarin?
I started in February of 1997, and I used that up until I started experimenting with that molecule I was telling you about, which would have been, oh gosh, when did I start with that? I started experimenting with that, I think it was like 2005. No, it was later than that, 2007 or 2008.
So the current version...
Myself with that, and that's brought me to this later thing, because you'd asked me, Linda, about the enhanced program, right? Okay, so one of the things, just briefly from what my research on the histamine, what I found is that with MS, you have trouble converting histamine into its active molecule, histamine 2, in the brain. And the histamine 2 is a big neurotransmitter. So I started studying that pathway. In fact, it was kind of interesting. We did a study. I had to argue quite a bit with Dr. Gilson. He was the principal investigator for our double-blind study on the Prokarin. And he kept saying, you know, you keep talking about this histamine 2, this histamine 3, this histamine 1. You know, histamine's histamine. And I said, no, that doesn't even make sense. You know, why would, if you're saying histamine's histamine, then why wouldn't Benadryl, an H1 blocker, work just like Zantac, an H2 blocker? It doesn't make sense. Don't tell me that. And so anyway, we actually did checked histamine levels in the people who had, you know, in our double-blind study. What we found, because the Prokarin in the cream formulation, as you know, if air got under the patch, it would cause a horrendous itch to your skin. And so we had to have our placebo cause the same thing, or else it wouldn't have been double-blind. People would have figured if they were on placebo or the other. So we did the exact same formulation as the Prokarin, except we didn't put the histamine in, and we didn't put the caffeine in. But we kept citric acid in the placebo, so that would cause the irritation, right? Well, interestingly, people who got the placebo, they had the highest irritation, and their histamine level just kept going up and up and up in the blood levels that we checked. People who got Prokarin were actually getting histamine, their histamine went up and then drastically dropped. And the greater the drop, the better the improvement. That made us realize, whoa, wait a minute. It's not a problem that people can't make histamine. They can't metabolize their histamine. So then I started studying that pathway. And I found this enzyme called monoamine oxidase A, MAOA. And I found that to be deficient. And when I started studying MAOA, it answered all the things about MS we haven't been able to answer. It answered why we're heat sensitive. It answered why the fatigue. It answered why the cold hands, the cold feet, the digestive problems, the cognitive problems. All these things started to answer. Now, MAOA is a very vulnerable enzyme. It gets depleted by aluminum, mercury, cadmium, copper, stress. Why stress, you know, bothers people with MS. high estrogen, lipid peroxidation, all these things will inhibit the MAOA. So I'm like, okay, that's probably what's causing the MS, right? Well, and research shows that as we age, MAOA decreases. And why does it decrease? Because all those things that will inhibit it. The longer you live, the more you're exposed to all those things, the more it inhibits, right? Not that it was supposed to be decreased as we age, but it does. So I realized at some point, Prokarin is not going to work for people like it did when they first started it, because they're aging. Their MAOA is going down. In Prokarin, we're just giving you the methylated histamine so that your body can convert it into the histamine 2. So we're still dependent on your MAOA being able to convert it into the histamine 2. So it's like, at some point, these people are going to find Prokarin's not working for them like it did in the beginning because they've aged. Their MAOA is continuing to go down. And so I realized, well, we've got to get around the MAOA. Okay, so that's what we figured out how to do in the Prokarin Enhanced H2 disc. We figured out how to go around that. How to actually take and convert that into the direct H2. Now, it's a little bit tougher to dose. Personally, for myself, I didn't like it. I kept working with it. Now people do it, but for myself, I didn't like it because a person who's not very advanced, totally symptom-free or something, you take that, you're now competing with your own body's production of HIS2 at the direct receptor stimulant. And when you do, the bodies get into an argument. It's like, hey, I'm in power here, I don't want you. And so you get symptoms. It's like, I can't come to an agreement. So a person who's more progressed and isn't making enough, doesn't have enough MAOA to make the histamine 2, their body's saying, hey, bring it on. I've been looking for you for some time, hey, and you get along with it much better. So a person who's needing more and more of the Prokarin disc, the full disc, or, using now a disc and a half of the Prokarin disc, it would be wise to, or you're using the full disc and you say, I'm still losing ground, you probably should try the enhanced H2 because your MAOA is probably too deficient to continue to make enough for you.
Is the enhanced packed like the regular?
Yeah, it's a disc, just like that. In fact, we can't do the enhanced in the cream. What we actually have done, we've taken the actual frequency off of that H2 aldehyde, that direct receptor agonist. We've taken the frequency off of it and put it in that disc. You can't put that frequency in the cream. It won't work.
So well, I'll find out because I'm gonna take your advice and get on the enhanced.
Thank you so much for blessing us not only with your presence, but with your stories so that we understand what drove you to such lengths to find treatment for yourself. That is really exciting. Thank you so much. Linda, did you want to?
Oh, I just want to thank you again. I thank you so much for your personal help for my situation and then being willing to come here and share your time and your education